Hello and welcome to the Brutal Iron Gym podcast, where our goal is to cut through the BS and deliver the brutal truth about topics related to health and happiness. So today's topic is about nutrition, and it's cutting weight for strength competitions. And the reason why we specify strength competitions is cutting weight, referring to kind of cutting water weight or body weight, is very different whether you're doing it for aesthetic competitions or strength competitions. So just for a quick little info, if people haven't listened to some of the past podcasts, I have helped people earn pro cards in aesthetic sports, and I've helped people have national records and have amazing performances in powerlifting, getting elite totals and whatnot. So I have helped people kind of to higher levels of each sport, and that gives you a little bit of background about what I'm about to tell you is backed by education. So I have a master's in nutrition, and it's also backed by experience. So I have worked with people in both just kind of blanking on the word there. So, but you can tell I have not worked in English very well. But I've both domains, kind of both areas. So I have worked with people of high level aesthetics and high level of strength. So when I say there is a difference, I know it, education and firsthand. So really the main thing you're looking for with strength competitions is you're trying to, most likely you're cutting weight to get to a weight class. So try to get to a certain body weight. When you're cutting weight for aesthetics, it's less likely you're trying to get a weight class. You're actually trying to get all the water out from under the skin, so that way the skin looks very thin and the muscles can actually show through. And we're going to save aesthetics for some other podcast because it's way too much detail to put both of these together. So we're going to talk about just strength on this one. So in general, we're kind of going to go through some general concepts here, and then we'll talk about the specifics as we go. But one of the things you want to think of is you don't want to go into a weight prep for a contest, strength contest, whether it's powerlifting, strongman, or whatever. You don't want to go into that with an enormous gap to kind of make up. So we're going to talk about what are kind of the appropriate amounts to expect. Now, in the world of powerlifting, there's different time frames for weigh-ins. So some people can weigh in 24 hours before the competition, and that means you have 24 hours to kind of refeed your body and refuel everything you did to it to try to make weight. And then there are other ones that are only 2 hours, and those are pretty extremely different. So a general recommendation, we'll talk about the exceptions of this, but the general recommendation I use with my clients is if we have a 24-hour weigh-in, we want to come in about 8 to 12 pounds overweight, the day before the weigh-in. So if they weigh in on a Friday, since it's 24 hours, they're going to typically weigh in on Friday and compete on Saturday. So Thursday morning, we want to weigh about 8 to 12 pounds over. And this does not mean like if they naturally are 3 pounds over that we're actually going to gain a bunch of weight to try to become 12 pounds over. No. So this would just be if you are, say you're coming into the competition and like I've had guys compete at 181 and they normally walk in around like 195, 200. So we'll try to get them down to about 10 to 12 over. So 191, 193. And try to cut from there the last 2 days, rather than them coming in at 200, and then we got, a lot to make up. And likewise, they don't need to diet down to be, 180, 183. They can actually just hold their normal weight through their training cycle, and if they come in at 10 to 12 over, that's fine, we can fix that. So, and that's actually pretty true of females too. So, there's going to be an enormous amount of caveats to everything I'm saying in this podcast. So take everything I'm saying here as general information. And if you have some extreme conditions, you're going to need some more specificity. So at the end of this, we're going to offer some help with creating a program specific for you. But the reason why I wanted to kind of throw that in there is I recommend people to come in at 8 to 12 over, whether they're male or female, whether they're 250 or they're 150. So it just kind of makes the whole process a little bit more manageable. So I've had females come in and maybe they needed to weigh like 123 or 132, something like that. And they've been 8 to 10 over and we were fine in a 24-hour weigh-in. And I've had males come in at trying to make 220 and they're 8 to 10 over, 8 to 12 over, and we work fine there. So you might think, okay, if a guy's bigger, if he's 250, maybe you can do a 25-pound drop. There's some truth to the size of the athlete will dictate the size of the weight drop you can do. But it's not like a perfect equation to where if I have a 125 pound person versus a 250 pound person, that they're allowed double the amount. So what I've found is that most people, if they're 8 to 12 over, if they're greater than that, they probably just need to move up a weight class and go ahead and solidify themselves and get bigger muscle to try to fill in that above weight class. So if you have to kind of have extreme cuts all the time, it might be, okay and reasonable to do it once if you're trying for like some kind of record. But if you're doing that repetitively over and over again, you might actually just be restricting yourself from growing into the heavier weight class. So again, these recommendations are general, and at the end, if you liked everything in here, but you feel like you're special in some way, and you want more unique information, you can reach out to us and we'll help you formulate a plan that you can use. So with all that stuff in mind, aiming to be 8 to 12 over if you have a 24-hour weigh-in, and aiming to be 4 to 8 pounds over if you have a 2-hour weigh-in. So if you are over that, the goal that we usually have with athletes is to diet early and coast into the meet. So if somebody's, say, 20 pounds overweight, we don't want to try to like drop 8 pounds the last 2 weeks and then do another, like a big cut into the meet. So I want them to get those 8 pounds off so they can come in 12 pounds over at max. They can come into the final week with that already being in place for a while. So maybe 4 to 8 weeks out, we cut the weight we need, and then we kind of hold our weight for the last 2 to 4 weeks. The reason why this is really, 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 really important is because when you're trying to cut weight through a dietary restriction, your strength will be affected. So it's better for you to do that earlier in the prep. And you can even do it before you even start like an 8-week prep for a meet. So if you know like 24 weeks or half a year out when your next meet is, get in shape and get where you need to be before you even start the whole prep cycle, before you start your 12 or 16 week cycle. So that's one method. Most people are not disciplined enough to do that. So we're usually trying to play catch up in the middle of the prep. And that would be the goal, is to diet early. So get to where you need to be weight-wise about 2 to 4 weeks before the meet. Let your body normalize at that weight. Let your strength kind of come back up a little bit, because now you're eating a little more calories. The body's not in such a stress over the calorie reduction. So now it's that calorie maintenance. The body can feel better. It can regain some of its strength before you do another little shock cut to it at the day before the meet. Okay? So diet early, coast close. That's a big, big, big component. Don't overlook that. Actually, if that's the only thing you get out of this whole dang podcast, that's probably the best one to get. Is don't try to save everything at the end and then magically expect yourself to be full strength. That's just stupid. You can't rip your body down and then tell it to do the best things it's ever done in its ever life. Ain't gonna work. So diet early, coast close. Now, the next thing we have is don't cut calories. So if you are within your range, so the last, let's say the last week of the prep, you're 8 to 12 over. And you know that that's where you're supposed to be, and you're going to be maybe a little nervous. So maybe you're like, if I'm 12 over, if maybe, Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, if I cut some calories, I can only be 8 over by Thursday and I'll be better. No, you won't. You'll be weaker. Do not cut calories. So get to the weight you need to be for your weight cut, your water cut, and then hold that for the last 2 to 4 weeks. And then don't cut calories. So what you're actually trying to do is just eliminate water being held in your body. So you can actually just swap some of your carbohydrates for fats. So carbohydrates, when we digest them and they break down and blah, 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 all the fancy stuff, our body stores water in our muscles through carbohydrates and sodium. So if you reduce carbohydrates in your diet, you'll reduce the body's ability to even hold on to water. So that's all you have to do, is simply just eliminate the carbs. You do not need to eliminate calories. So if carbs are what holds water, just get rid of them. It doesn't mean you have to eliminate calories. That's going to be a huge difference that I see most people when they come to me and I help them with this stuff. That's one of the things that kind of shocks them, is we don't reduce calories at all. So the last week, and I've had people hit national records, amazing records, hit elite totals, hit PRs of every single lift. So, and we never cut calories. It's very rare that we have to cut calories. We just have to simply eliminate the carbohydrates enough so their body can't possibly hold water, and then the water kind of drops off of them, and then we kind of are where we need to be to sweat out the rest. So this is typical. We all kind of know this. If you're competing in a powerlifting meet, you probably are at least familiar enough with the dieting world to know that when people start brand new diets, they often have a big weight loss the first week, and then it kind of slows down and plateaus from there. And the reason why they have that big weight loss the first week is because they have a food restriction, which often involves a carbohydrate restriction, and that reduces water retention. So by simply just changing their carbohydrate intake, they lose a significant amount of weight that first week just due to water retention. And that's what we're looking for if we're cutting weight for a strength contest, is we want to reduce water weight. We don't want to reduce your body weight necessarily in terms of muscle mass or fat or bone or whatever else makes up your weight. We just want to reduce water. So one of the things you can do is just simply switching out carbohydrates for fats. Then we said the combination of holding water in your body is carbs, water, and sodium. So what do you do with sodium? Usually people go hog wild with a bunch of crazy stuff on sodium that they absolutely don't need. So you don't need to manipulate sodium at all until the last week. So, and if we do any kind of sodium manipulation, what we do is we have the person salt their foods Monday through Wednesday. So you just add some table salt. You can do iodized salt, and there's all these fancy types of salts. And there is differences between them all, but for the most part, you just want to add some salt to your foods Monday through Wednesday. Your body's going to kind of soak that in, soak in a little extra water, and that's assuming you're eating carbohydrates. That's why we don't cut carbs during that phase. So you only cut carbs the last day or two to make weight. So if I cut carbs Monday through Wednesday, but I'm adding sodium, I'm kind of an idiot. So I'm kind of playing with the pieces in the wrong way. So what's going to happen is you're going to dump all this sodium in, hoping that your body super compensates by holding a lot of water, so that way you can dump a lot of water later in the week. But how's it going to hold any water if you're not eating any carbs? So you have to have carbs and sodium at the same time if you want to hold water. You have to take carbs and sodium away at the same time if you want to lose water. So that's typically what we do is with their carbohydrates, like we said, we keep the diet normal until the last day or two, and then we just swap out fats for carbs. And with sodium, we add the sodium while they're having the carbs Monday through Wednesday, but we take the sodium away Thursday and Friday. And that helps them get that kind of compensating drop where the body will dry out a little extra. Then in terms of dehydration, so we would take away what they would drink really only the last few hours before the weigh-in. So there's absolutely no need to restrict water intake, like greater than 24 hours ahead of time. It's unnecessary, absolutely. So really this earliest I kind of start is about 12 hours before the weigh-in, where we just kind of have them maybe start tapering down to that point and then just not drink anything if we absolutely are in need of that big of a restriction. But often I'll have people kind of sip on water, just plain normal water, because at that time they're not taking any sodium, they're not taking any carbohydrates. We don't have to worry about that water sitting in them. It's going to run right through them. They're going to pee it right out. So we want to give them enough water to kind of stay hydrated enough, but they don't need to be chugging gallons of it. But also at the same time, if they're not having any sodium or carbs, there's no need for us to fully restrict the water because the water can't sit in there anyhow. So, and in aesthetic competitions, you actually have people do what's called glycogen depletion workouts the day before, or the 2 days before the meet. Their competition, their show, and actually burn up any stored glycogen in their muscles. So I haven't had to really do that for many powerlifters, but every once in a while we have to do it, to where there might be some just residual glycogen, to where if they do drink the water, it has some chance of holding. So we'll do a little bit of like a high pump workout, nothing muscle damage wise or inflammation wise, just kind of using the muscles, making them contract, and that'll burn up a little bit of glycogen for them. And then the last thing we have, general comments, is sweating it out. So when would you go into a sauna or something like that? So that's one of the better ways to lose weight in terms of water weight rather than dieting the last couple days. So again, when you lower calories, you're going to lower your strength. Whereas if you just wrap yourself up in a big bodysuit or 1,000 layers of clothes and go sit in your hot car, that'll sweat out a lot of water and have less of a negative impact on your strength. So that's typically how I have to do it. So a lot of the clients, they typically have to I don't know, it's kind of a mixed bag. Some of them have to drive to the weigh-in, and maybe their drive's 2 or 3 hours. So I just have them wrap themselves up in a bunch of clothes and turn the heat on, and they drive to the weigh-in and sweat it out. Some people, I'll have them just sit in their car in the parking lot and get hot. I tend to like a dry air environment versus a wet air environment. So an example of this would be like a sauna, or if you sat in your bathroom and taped off the doors and like all the openings and ran hot water to get the room really hot. There's a lot of moisture in the air, and I feel like sometimes that can impact the effect you're going to get. So I like having people do more dry air type places. And there are differences about skin cracking and lips health and stuff like that, but again, we're just getting into general information here. So hopefully that was not too much, but that's a lot of information. And like I said, you can email us at brutalironggym@gmail.com, and I'll even send you a little transcript of this podcast if you'd like to see it in a written form. But again, the general concepts are to diet early and then coast and hold your weight closer to the meet. Don't cut calories, just trade carbs for fats. Don't worry about sodium loading and depletion too much. If you want to at all, just salt your foods Monday through Wednesday while you still have carbs, and then take the salt away when you take the carbs away. For dehydration, if you are manipulating salt and carbs and you're taking those away, don't worry too much about whether you should have no liquids whatsoever. Sip on enough to feel healthy. You don't need to chug a whole bunch, but you don't need to also fully just say no liquids whatsoever for a day. And then sweating it out, that's a good way to do it, to lose the last few pounds. So by manipulating your carbohydrates and sodium, you might lose, say, 4 to 6 pounds. Then you'll sweat out the remaining 4 to 6 pounds. And that's kind of a good combination. And again, like we said, with the difference in like weigh-in times, so for the 24-hour weigh-ins, we typically aim for 8 to 12 pounds, and that can be dropped pretty easily. So I've done greater amounts and I've done lesser amounts, but 8 to 12 pretty much always goes well. For 2-hour weigh-ins, a 4 to 8 pound drop is pretty good. And again, that can be done relatively well. So we've done some bigger ones, which are a little bit of a pain in the ass with a 2-hour window. And sometimes it's more of the pain in the butt is actually on the back end, is on the replenishing of the weight before the meet. So it's not that hard to cut weight before a 2-hour weigh-in, but it is hard to get them back to being ready to lift after just 2 hours. So that becomes the trouble, is the replenishing period, not so much getting them down where they need to be. So let's talk about the replenishing stuff. So what you want to do is, after you make weight, you want to have liquids, carbs, and sodiums. I didn't need the S on sodium. But you want to have water of a sort, like liquid, carbohydrate, and sodium, because that creates glycogen and that replenishes the muscles. And that's a big thing you need to make sure that your strength kind of feels fully there, you have full endurance for the day, and you actually protect yourself from injury. So a fully hydrated muscle is a more stretchy, bouncy muscle, rather than being dehydrated, which can likely cause tears and stress and stuff like that to the muscles. So our goal is to have some liquids, but start slow. Have carbs, like with foods, and try to have like easily digested carbs, so carbohydrate sources that don't have a lot of fats or proteins mixed in with them, so just kind of straight up carbs. And with some sodium, you can sprinkle some salt on there. And you want to think of a pyramiding your liquid, carb, and sodium into the meet time. So once you weigh in, you want to start slow. A little bit of water, a little bit of carbs, a little bit of sodium. And then you want to kind of get more and more and more until about the middle time of when you're going to compete, and then taper back down so that way you don't have huge belly stress and issues right when you're about ready to try to squat. So if you're running into the bathroom in between your warm-ups, that's not going to be a very confidence-building experience. So think about that as if you have 24 hours, you can kind of think of it as like maybe the first 4 hours you're going to ease into drinking and eating and having sodium. Then you're going to have a good 8-hour window to kind of get in what you need to get your body weight back up. And then you're going to take the last 4 hours to kind of taper that back off. With a 2-hour window, like we said, it's a much smaller time frame. So you might have 30 minutes to ease in, about an hour to kind of get what you need in, and then 30 minutes to taper back off. So what that's going to do is it's going to let your body replenish slowly, so that way you don't feel so full right away and your body fights the process. And then you're going to have what you need in the middle, and then like we said, you taper off towards when you're going to start, so that way you don't have digestional stress right when you're trying to squat. So that's some good information for replenishing. And then the last couple things I'll say that might help is to practice before you play. So give this a try. Take a weekend and kind of do a mock. You don't have to do a mock meet. Like, you don't have to do it for your training, but do a mock meet in terms of the diet and the water replenishing. So just kind of try cutting weight. See if you can cut 8 pounds or so, and see how that feels. And then go lift on that Saturday. You don't even have to do a full meet kind of mock. You can just do a normal workout, but just see what it feels like. If you feel really sluggish, then maybe you didn't replenish enough. So a general rule for replenishment is to try to put back whatever weight you took off. So if I took off 12 pounds 24 hours before the weigh-in, I want to put 12 pounds back on 24 hours after the weigh-in. So something like that, where it's kind of an even trade. And so that's what you want to do. Just kind of practice and then actually lift weights. So sometimes people practice the weight cut, but they don't actually lift or work out right afterwards. And you're not going to necessarily then have the feeling of what it's going to feel like at the meet. So do a workout when you come back from your weight cut and see how it feels. And then the general advice I'd end with is to keep the time frame of what you do to your body as small and as short as possible. So make it very short and intense rather than long and drawn out. So when you go through a weight cut and you're trying to dieting for weeks, you're starting to cut water and do sodium manipulation like a week or 2 weeks ahead of time. That's all kind of unnecessary, absolutely unnecessary. And the longer it's drawn out, the more your body's going to downgrade and lose strength. Whereas if you kind of hit it quick and then back out, the body doesn't have time to adjust to that at all, so it's just going to stay where it was, which was super strong if you did your prep right. Whereas if you draw this stuff out and you kind of like stress the body and pull it, like break it down and break it down and break it down, it's going to bring its strength levels down to the stress that you're causing it. And then all of a sudden you're going to try to peak for the meet and there ain't going to be no peak there. So try to keep it very, very short, just 1 or 2 days towards the weigh-in, like maybe just Thursday and Friday, and then hit the weigh-ins hard Friday night or Saturday morning. And then try to do everything you can in that short time frame so that way your body doesn't downgrade to a longer, more stressful, drawn-out process. Cool. So hopefully this helped give you some pointers and some information that you can apply for your own. And like I said, take this stuff and practice it a little bit and see what you feel and see how the process goes for you. You might find things a little bit different than what I said, and that's absolutely going to happen because I've done it differently for every single person I worked with. So there are some general common things that are common, quote unquote, but everybody I work with is a little bit different. So we've had to do it a little bit differently every time. And that's the same with training. So your training program should look a little bit different than your friends. So if you all, like if everybody's sharing a coach and you all follow the same damn program, that's not good. You're all different human beings. You should have different programs. So everybody's a little bit different. So there are general common themes that are universal, but how you apply them are a little bit different from person to person. So give it a try and experiment and see how you do. If you would like help with setting up something specific for you, of course, we're happy to help. So just shoot us an email at brutalironGym@gmail.com. We'll exchange some information and try to get you a good program set up. Cool. So hopefully this was helpful. If you like this information, you can find more from us on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter at Brutal Iron Gym. And if you like the podcast, you can sign up to become a patron of the podcast by donating $10 or more per month towards the podcast. And for your donation, we'll send you exclusive monthly content, including training programs. So if you're a powerlifter and you're listening to this, you can get powerlifting programming for $10 a month. Yep. And these are good programs. These are programs and structures and stuff that I use in my current clients. So basically what these programs are is I'm using the current structure, but I'm putting in more kind of common exercises. That way multiple people can follow this. And like I just said before, is everybody's a little bit different. But for $10 a month, you're not going to get a personalized program. That's just the truth of it. So $10 a month is going to get you a very good program that I know will work and has worked in the past. You can learn it, adjust it as you go, or you can kind of use it to get started, get familiar with the process, and then if you like it, then you can hire a coach. So that would be something to get you started. But it's new programs every single month, and there's a new concept for every program, so that way you learn something every month. So, again, that's just with that $10 donation. That's it. So you can, if you'd like an example of the program, you can shoot us an email at brutalironGym@gmail.com. We'll send you a sample. And if you'd like to become a patron, you can do so directly on the Podbean app, or shooting us an email, or do a Google search, Become a Patron, Brutal Iron Gym Podcast. And if you like the podcast, please share it with family and friends. So the more people we help, the happier the world's going to be. And if you have any questions, feedback, or suggestions, we'd love to hear from you. So this podcast is for you. So we want to know what you want to learn about. And you can reach us at our email at brutalironGym@gmail.com. So as always, I hope this was helpful, and thank you for listening.